Moving on to some MMA news. Don't know how much there is to cover, but a couple of stories that we've got to discuss. First on the bat, because it slightly relates to the women's bantamweight division, and obviously we just had a main event fight, a potential title eliminator in that weight class. We have got the date for the rematch. Pena versus Nunes 2. It is going to be the headlining fight on UFC 277, which I believe is taking place on July 30th. So we have got that headlining the card. Brandon Moreno versus Kai Kara France 2 as the co-main event, and some other good fights lined up as well. So really, the next three pay-per-views as we're getting into the summer season, all of them look like fucking fire. We've got 2 title fights at least on each one, great featured fights. And Josh, what do you feel about the date and the fight itself? Are you happy to see this being a headliner?
Yeah, of course. More than anything, like it's just sort of the state of affairs now. We've got amazing pay per views because over the last, I think, 10 years, the price of a pay per view has actually fucking doubled. And because of the ESPN deal, they just churn out subpar fight nights. We're very lucky when we get good fight nights. So yeah, excited for the pay per views. I am starting to grow somewhat resentful of the kind of fighter churn. How many debutants and new names I'm constantly having to learn and research. How fucking abysmal their pay is. And frankly, after what we watched this weekend, I need the pay per views. I'm alright with having fights every week, but the standard has to fucking be there. Like, end of. So yeah, stack pay per views great. I kind of wouldn't mind it if we went back to the days where maybe the pay per views weren't as deep, but the talent was kind of spread around the calendar a little better. You know, you'd had fucking title fights on fight nights and things. I don't think we'll ever get that
Well,
again.
you touched on an interesting point, and actually, this is a good conversation that we can have. Maybe there's a guy who has an MMA related channel. It was an absolute fucking prick of a human being. He's a ginger bearded fuck called the MMA Guru, and the guy, you would hate this person like passionately. I saw a video pop up and immediately hated the guy. He's basically one of those people that is like, all women's MMA is shit. The girls are shit. I don't want to have to watch it. The UFC's wasting their time with
Oh
it.
yeah, fuck
Every
that guy
single
then.
girl fight is shit. Um, but he made one interesting point, and it's the only thing that he said that I kind of agree with, which is the negative of the UFC Apex. Great thing during the pandemic because it basically saved the show, saved the sport, and kept fights going on. The negative now, though, is that when they do a fight night at a location where they've got to sell tickets for an arena, we're seeing really good fight night cards because there's a pressure to fill the arena. When they put fights on at the Apex, they don't have that pressure. They're already paid for ESPN, they don't need people to buy the pay per view, and they don't need to get bums and seats. So you can get away with having subpar cards and then super loading the pay per views that you then charge an absolute arm and a leg for. There's an argument to say that the Apex is becoming a negative thing because if you look at 2019, most fight night cards had to be better because all of them were at locations. And okay, you got the odd one that wasn't necessarily a barn burner, but what you usually had is a situation like a local hometown fighter is headlining the card or on a co-main event so that you get some kind of general interest. When it's on at the Apex, you can put a card on because it doesn't matter how many people watch it and you don't have an arena to fill. What do you kind of think about sort of that argument? Do you think the Apex is maybe kind of being taken for granted a little bit?
Nah, because whether or not it was in the Apex, if they had found another way to continue putting on the shows, we'd still have this kind of diminishment in the quality. Uh, I'm kind of numb to like the loss of crowd, to be honest. And they did talk about, Uros Medic said, he preferred being back in the Apex. So for some fighters, it works. It's kind of nice to have the variation, maybe. It's really more the ESPN deal, Contenders Series, the sale to WME, and just some of it's good, some of it's bad, but I feel like we can't help but struggle through these kind of awkward years where fighter pay is not where it's inevitably going to end up. It's still way too fucking low, and rather than
Well,
negotiate and hammer it out with the fighters and try and work out a fairer way to do it with them, they just replace them for fighters that will work for less. So
well, let's just give an example of how, because I think I'm all for getting great pay-per-views, but I think I'm just going to read out what the lineup is for UFC 276, and you tell me if you can see at what point is there a few too many cherries on the cake that could be spread around some other cakes. So main event, Adesanya versus Cannonier, awesome. Co-main event, another title fight, Volks versus Holloway 3. Feature fight, Strickland versus Pereira, great fight. Lauren Murphy versus Miesha Tate, great fight. Sean O'Malley versus Pedro Nunes, great fight. Amazing main card. We get to the prelims. Feature fight, Uriah Hall versus Andre Muniz. Okay, that's a great feature fight. But then, Jessica Rai versus Macy Barber. Big fucking flyweight fight. Brad Tavares versus Dricus du Plessis. Does that need to be the third fight down on the prelims? That could be a co-main event of the fight night, or a main event fight of the fight night. Robbie Lawler starting the prelims against Brian Barberena. You're telling me that couldn't be on a main card somewhere else as a co-main event somewhere?
Yeah, that probably would be a fight night co-main. Whether or not it deserves to be, with the way Robbie kind of fights these days. No knocks against Robbie. I'm just saying, like, he's not the all-out action fighter. Just isn't himself anymore. So I'm okay with that.
First fight on the night is Brad Riddell versus Jaylen Turner.
Yeah, this is a very, very, very deep prelims. This is ridiculous.
You can take 4 of those fights, and spread them across these other cards, do some swaps, and none of us would have looked at that main card, at that fight card for UFC 276, and not said this is a great fucking card.
Yeah.
It's just that's the level where I'm like, okay, I'm all for super loading the card, but when you've got main card level fights on the early prelims, it's like, come on, guys, like, you don't need it to be that stacked just because you're charging $60. You're only charging $60 for the last 5 fights.
It's not 60 anymore. It's 80 or 85.
70 or 80. Yeah, it was stupid. It was absolutely stupid.
Yeah.
But listen, I think they should spread it around. I do think there's an argument for the arena thing, because the Texas fight night they're going to do is going to be huge. So's the Paris one, so's the London one, so was the Ohio one that they did in Calabasas. So I think there's examples of when they need to fill an arena, they're putting good fights on. It just feels like they're saving the stat cards for those moments, rather than just going, fuck it, let's make this fight card really good.
There's another element as well, we have been getting a lot of really good, there might not be name value, but there's good matchmaking, and there's a lot of fan favourites, and there's a lot of sort of kind of cult MMA celebrities, as in were, going up against each other from time to time. If you keep churning your roster the way they do, you're going to lose those opportunities, because you're not going to want to pay like a fucking Robbie Lawler what he's worth, to sit on these cards, and it would just end up being you'll have to be a proper hardcore fan knowing these guys from the regional circuit to really start drumming up the appropriate level of interest. I mean, fucking GD and Giacani. I didn't know what his regional record was. That's really fucking impressive. We probably should be a little bit more hyped up for that guy the last couple of times he was fighting. But there's so many fucking new faces, it's impossible for us to stay on top of all of the regional records. It's not going to be forever. The current model is unsustainable. This fighter pay issue is not going to go away. Right now, though, I get a little pissed off when I see these stacked pay-per-view cards, because I do think, so what we've got, June 11th or something like that, and then July 30th. So I've got
July 2nd and then July 7th.
Oh, okay. As you say, because I've got 7 weeks with minimal good fights. It's going to be kind of a shitty summer. As long as they keep,
which is weird, because July.
Interested.
Well, here's the thing. July looks like it's going to be fantastic, because you've got 2 pay-per-views. You've got the Paris and you've got the London card, and I think you've got around June 30th as well. I think they go to Texas, which is going to be a big fight night card. So there is a stretch where or some, I can't remember exactly, but there's a good stretch in the summer
Yeah.
where we're gonna have a series of really good fucking fight nights, good pay-per-views, and just good fights in general. But it feels like they have these kind of waves, and then you get these weeks like, did we need to have a fight night? Like, obviously these are good fighters and they need to get paid, but when the card is that shallow, it's like, how much benefit are you getting from having a fight night on that week if you're not really going to make it that appealing for like a casual fan to be able to grip into?
Yeah. And the other thing is, we've got fighters sitting out just because they're not liking the matchups they're getting offered. Something's got to give. At some point, the UFC is going to have to give the fighters more freedom in picking their fights and their opponents, or they're going to have to pay them more to fight who they're told to fight, and they're going to have to stop signing and releasing so many fighters because fucking PFL and Bellator are going to keep picking up the ones that they whiffed on, and I don't know.
This is true.
When you buy that many fucking scratch cards and you keep throwing away small time winners because you didn't think enough of them, you're gonna look fucking foolish because of the sheer volumes you're going through. The PFL have a roster something like 5% the size of the UFC's. Bellator's is like 10% the size if they're lucky. But you know, Dana White decided not to sign Brendan Loughnane. You know, he looks an absolute fucking beast in PFL. I'm so fucking tired, man. I can't think off the top of my head. There's so many
Well, don't worry,
you can kind of pick up on and be like,
well,
why are you fucking letting these guys go for peanuts? It's just such an arrogant kind of business model you've got.
well, there's weird ones as well. So let's move away from that. Let's look at not so much the established guys, but let's look at somebody like a Dean Barry that comes in with a huge amount of promise. Everyone's raving about how good this guy could be. And he has an unfortunate disqualification loss against Mike Jackson. Like, listen, cracked the guy in the balls, badly eye gouged him, was warned about it a couple of times. It happens. You need to be in control of your weapons. They cut this guy because obviously the UFC thinks so little of Mike Jackson that their logic is that's just like, you lost to Mike Jackson, I don't care how it is, you're not fighting in my company. Now, Dean Barry's a young guy that made a mistake. That's his first fight and he fucked up. But he's probably going to either go on the regional tour, look great, and then get signed for one of these other big ones, or he's going to go into a Bellator or a PFL, and he's going to do really well. And you're going to end up looking like an idiot because you never even gave the guy a fair shot. Another good example is Max Roshkov, where they just decided, nah, you're a quitter. You didn't want to come out for that third round.
Yeah, I mean, that's as much on Max as it is on anyone else. And that Dean Barry one,
it is. But
I don't want to side with the UFC here, but Dean Barry did look fucking dog shit. That fight was awful. I was glad when it was called off.
It was, but I'm just saying, if you don't give your young guys even an opportunity to develop, that's where
that unforgiving approach.
Silly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Moving away from that, and kind of because obviously we've now sort of brought up PFL, and I want to touch on this because I know it's something that you're going to be a fan of. PFL have announced that they will be splitting their revenue, profits, 50-50 with the fighters. I know you must have been happy when you've seen this, and I think it's a fantastic step.
Only on the pay-per-views. But yeah, they're going to do a few pay-per-views. And yeah, I really like this. This is really smart on their part because, again, the big thing that Bellator and PFL have got over the UFC is money, fighter pay. We can't give you the same prestige and we can't give you the same kind of legacy fights, but we can give you a shit ton of money. And with PFL, you know that barring some horrific injury or something, you're essentially guaranteed at least 2 fights a year. And you're going to bleed a little less because there's no elbows until the final. So, are they limiting on the semi-finals? Just the final? I think just the final. Need to sleep, Josh. Too tired. I think I'm doing pretty good, considering I didn't really sleep last night. I'm just about holding it together.
You're doing well. It's a positive sport step. I think if there's one thing we've learned with this sport is UFC is very rarely going to be the pioneers on these kind of moves. It takes other shows to do it first, and then the UFC will follow. Obviously, one are kind of trying to do that with weight cutting, and we just got to wait and see what ends up kind of really working and getting adopted. But great to see that kind of move being made, and eventually I think the UFC are going to be pressured into it because listen, fighters are obviously paid a lot better, but the UFC are probably making a big old chunk, and obviously they're not going to want to give it up because they've got shareholders. Their shareholders generally do not have great morals, so it's going to take some pressure. But positive signs, which I'm glad to see. Maybe some other quick news, bit of fun in the boxing world. A couple of exhibitions. Mayweather did some weird fight in Dubai against his old training partner, and just absolutely demolished him, and still looks like a killer at 45, 46 years old. And Anderson Silva looks, it was an exhibition fight, so he didn't officially get the win. But apparently, if there was any scorecards whatsoever, they all would have gone to Anderson because he completely pieced up this guy Machado.
Yeah, I saw the finish. Well, no, I saw the last moments of the fight. Was the Mayweather one an exhibition as well then?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Shit. I mean, I fucking hope we're at the end of people caring so much about the exhibition boxing. Like, I literally read someone saying, one of the Paul brothers is a lot more interested in taking the exhibition fight against Anderson Silva after this one. And I'm just that I should be having to look long and hard to find these kind of articles. They should not just be peripherally available for me. I don't need to know shit about that. But yeah, still cool that Anderson Silva's getting it done at his age. We also had Eagle FC over the weekend as well. It's another pioneering organisation with the 165 welterweight class going. But bit of a weird one.
Man, Junior Dos Santos was taking on Jorgen De Castro, who did have a good win in the UFC, but kind of looked subpar aside from that. And man, this was JDS's all fucking day, man. He was running away with this. He was looking good. And just dislocates his shoulder in the third round. I didn't even realize he did it. Like, it was just really weird. It was kind of like this weird pause, and then he
tries
kind of
to pop
walking
it
away
back
and you don't know
in.
what's going on. Tries to pop it back in, and
My fucking guy.
it's gutting, man, because the worst thing is with dislocated shoulder, like, I'm sure it's not feeling great. But once it's popped back in, like, with the adrenaline, you kind of feel like, fuck, I can just go. If that happens 5 seconds before the end of the second round, you know the corner's just going to try and pop that back in, and he's probably going to be able to continue. But your arm's out, you can't continue, man. And
yeah, depending on the commission, I think it's automatically a loss. But the other thing is, if you pop it back in, chances of it coming out again are pretty fucking good.
Pretty high, yeah.
Oh, who was that guy that... Oh, shit, he was in the UFC. It's like lightweight, featherweight guy, dislocates his shoulder, pops it back in, and then it comes out again later in the fight. And it just looked like just the least amount of fun. Just a tremendous amount of pain. So gnarly. Jesus Christ, who was it? Homework. I'm going to come up with a name for next week on our bullshit episode.
But no, a bit of unfortunate. And obviously the other big fight was Thiago Silva against Hector Lombard, which also did not really end on a particularly good note. Illegal knee, deemed to be accidental. And the fight gets called a no contest in the third round, which is a little strange.
Yeah. I don't entirely understand that, but I'm not going to lie, with the DQs, the no contests, and the time to go to the decision, I don't know how much it fluctuates between commissions as well, and which kind of unified set of rules they've got. But I always think I know until the next one comes up, and then they explain why my thought process is wrong, and nothing seems to be sinking in. I swear to God, they make it up as they go along. I can't seem to make sense of it most of the time.
It's a weird one. And I feel sometimes refs make that, like, it feels like it's something that the referee has decisions on. Like, I feel like the ref can decide intention, unintention, disqualification, all this kind of stuff. So
I think in the third
I feel
round,
like a lot of the time,
it's either straight up, it's a deliberate knee, DQ, or accidental goes to the cards with or without point deduction. Which, if it's accidental and the fight can't continue, you'd think a point deduction would be pretty unfair, given that it's not going to impact any more of the fight. But
yeah, it's a really awkward one. But tough pill for Hector Lombard to swallow. I didn't watch the whole fight. There was the only two fights I saw highlights of. Is there anything else on the card that stood out?
That's all I did.
It's what it is. It's still building. They're still building.
Weekend.
Tell you what, though, mate. there's so many different fucking minor promotions being set up by former fighters now, though. You've got Eagle FC, James Krause has set one up, Uriah Faber's set one up. Obviously, Masvidal's got his Gamebred MMA thing he's trying to set up.
Well, there's always been a lot of them. To be honest, it's just that with things like Fight Pass, there's now ways to get that kind of immediate kind of distribution deal, that kind of broadcast deal. So and you know, people are, there are more like online kind of pay-per-view models. You know, there's like the jiu-jitsu stuff that people have been doing online for a while. That's a very kind of lucrative sort of market for like small-time promoters doing a similar kind of thing with MMA. It's just that, you know, now that we hear about them because they're going to get promoted on Fight Pass or something, or it's just, you know, fighters and coaches and gyms that are just a bit too big to ignore. But there's always kind of been this sort of never-ending cycle of people that don't want to leave the fight game and they want to try and put back into the sport and put back into what they view as their kind of community. It's just that now it actually kind of pays off, and now it seems to be, you know, for every like Joshua Salmon kind of putting money into a regional promotion before his death and not getting to see any kind of payoff from it, there's going to be a few more kind of Habibs, and I hope Masvidal's not going to struggle, because obviously we were talking about it at the time when it happened, but when he attacked Colby Covington, he had his license review or license kind of meeting to see if he was going to get his promoter's license in Nevada, which is a fucking huge one. It's the biggest one. It is what it is.
Yeah.
There's no athletic commission you would want to work with more for combat sports. You know, Nevada, Las Vegas, it very much is the home of combat sports. Definitely the home of MMA with the way the UFC have kind of set up their operations there. And he does it like a fucking week before he has the meeting, and that really kind of fucked him over. So I hope Gamebred fighting keeps going, but that was.
He's got his court date set. He's got his court date set, and he's pled not guilty. So we'll see what happens there. Talking about welterweights, a bit of other news. Usman's hand is not recovering as quickly as he hoped. So it's looking like it's going to be a postponement, further postponement for the Leon Edwards versus Usman fight. They're hoping maybe September, but it's sounding more like it's going to be next year. And this is opening up the possibility that we end up seeing an interim title fight. So, fun little game that I thought we could play. Assuming it's going to be an interim fight, and assuming that Leon Edwards is going to be one half of that, who's the other half of that interim title shot?
Chimaev's calling for it. I think that one kind of makes sense. For me, you know, either Chimaev or Burns would be a good shout. Burns has been praising Leon Edwards recently, saying he's way too underrated. People don't give him enough credit. I think Burns understands how dangerous that guy would be and how that might not be the best matchup for him. Because whereas a guy like Chimaev's going to be better than him in the stand-up, he knows that he's going to come in and exchange. Whereas Edwards is going to look to stay a little further out, use his speed to close the distance and kind of pick him apart, make him look a little more foolish. He's not going to be able to land that sort of strong right hand when he can. So I think he probably takes himself out of the running. So you're going to be looking at Chimaev or, I don't know, maybe Colby if he's not fighting Poirier. But I guess they're probably just going to do the Poirier fight.
Colby can't fight while the court case is going on. Not while he's saying that he got brain damage from being punched by Masvidal.
All right. While we're just sort of hypothetically kind of building things here, I'm going to say that they settle out, because he needs to fucking settle out. But both sides need to settle out. Okay, so let's just assume that sort of happens before the end of the summer. If they're going to do an interim fight, maybe it's going to be something like September, like you say. So, yeah, I think Colby's going to be available for that. So my money would be on Chimaev if they do an interim title fight. If not, possibly Colby if he's not going to fight the Diamonds. I think Burns sits this one out because I think he likes his chances better against the Chimaev, or maybe going up against Usman again. As ridiculous as that would seem, because if you beat Usman, you're not just beating a champ, you're beating a fucking legend at this point. And perhaps
you can't give it to Burns
because he lost to Chimaev.
You're not off a loss. You'd need a win to be in that conversation.
Seen stranger things happen, but if for whatever reason Chimaev's not available, then I don't think they have any problem giving Burns a call. But yeah, you're like, off the loss, I don't think he's keen to fight Leon right now. Let's just take Dorino out of this one. Colby maybe, Chimaev probably. Shit, have we got any other ranked weights fighting each other anytime soon? That's the real question.
Are you saying, Josh, that thinking of candidates, you can't remember the name?
Oh, what, Bilal? Fucking hell. He's got a fight coming up, hasn't he?
He hasn't. He's just had a fight. He just beat Luque.
Yeah, right.
So here's my logic.
Do the rematch.
With Leon, you've got fun with both Chimaev or Bilal. Bilal's a rematch. Chimaev, he's already been booked to face twice, and it didn't happen. So I think you can get a little bit of a story. As long as there's gold on offer, Leon's going to do it. And I don't think Leon would be that afraid of either guy. Really. No. Listen, Leon, I think the biggest thing that's held Leon back is that he has a style. It's a little bit similar to Adesanya, I think, to a certain point, where he won't necessarily blow out a low-level fighter and look spectacular. He's good at figuring you out and beating what's in front of him. So he doesn't always blow these guys away and amaze everybody. But I do feel he's one of those people where no matter who he fights, his level will raise, but he'll raise his level to deal with what he needs to deal with.
Yeah.
Arnold Allen trained with him and said he's never seen anything like it. He said he's the best he's ever seen. And he said at TriStar, all the rest, he's like, that is the best mixed martial artist I have ever seen in person. What he does in the gym. The guy is unbelievable. So
yeah, he just needs the respect now. That's it.
It's the speed, man. It's the speed, it's the movement, it's the stance switching. I think the only thing that you'd say with the Chimaev fight is that Gilbert Burns had a submission threat that kind of removed a lot of the grappling threat from Chimaev, and it made it a stand-up fight. And my question would be with somebody like Leon Edwards is, would he have that same fear? Or would we see much more of I'm just going to get the fight to the ground and I'm not going to give up on that kind of mentality?
He's come a long way since Usman beat him with the lay and pray, you know. He has excellent takedown defense. He has good defensive grappling from what I understand and from what little I've seen. And honestly, if you're kind of going to work with Tom Breeze every day, there's no way you're not going to be, to some degree, ready for a Chimaev. It's just, who can land the heavy shot first? Who can land that game-changing shot first? My bet would be Leon, because he's got the better reactions, he's faster, and he doesn't make as many mistakes as Chimaev's going to make in the first 2 minutes of a fight, just by being Chimaev, you know? He's very aggressive, he likes coming forward, it's very exciting. It's not what you do against world-class opposition, but who knows? Maybe Burns is taught him to think twice about these things. I doubt it, though.
Time will tell. Either way, it's a bit of a gutting news for Leon, but as long as he ends up getting the shot for gold in one form or the other this year, I can live with it.
Yeah. I would take the interim fight if I was Leon, of course.
Yeah. To be honest, man, that's all of the MMA things I wanted to cover. Anything else on your radar before we call it a show?
Not really. I can't imagine that I didn't say something about it at the time. Obviously, Bournemouth are going back up to the Premier League. David Brooks is cancer-free. The Eagles have had one hell of an off-season. I'm pretty fucking excited for August, September time. NFL, Premier League football for the Cherries. I don't know. Anything else on your mind?
Yeah, man. End of the Premier League season. Arsenal did not make Champions League. We fucked it up.
Man.
Which to Tottenham, which kind of sucks. So I'm glad that there's no football for the summer. It gives me a chance to mentally recover from all of that. NFL season. I wanted to talk about this last week, but we were going to save it, I think, for this week. These schedules all got released, so all the teams know what their schedules are. This is a bit of a bigger deal with the NFL than it is for the Premier League because you don't play all the teams. So how it all works out, the schedules, obviously America's a big place, so an away game isn't just an away game. You might be traveling 3,000 miles for that away game, so it's a whole factor that comes in. Every team releases their schedule differently. Some teams just go, hey, here's our schedule. Have fun, everybody. But I just want to highlight some teams that decided to have some fun with it. The Seattle Seahawks released a fake schedule to their team ahead of it actually coming out, and basically made all of the squad think that they were going to have the schedule from hell. So, like, the first 5 games of the season were all away games that involved them, like, just darting all across the country. I had them playing on Thanksgiving Day and Christmas Day, both away from home. No bye week after they play in Germany. And all the players just, like, freaking the fuck out. And then Pete Carroll, the coach, walks in and starts being told the schedule and is just going fucking ballistic. Like, he's swearing, he's screaming. And they get to,
So
like,
this was
week
not a
9.
professional way to do it, then, is what they must have
No,
done.
this is just like the general manager just having fun with everybody. So they get to week 9, and they tell it, and they start telling, like, what the schedule is. And Pete Carroll goes, "What's week 10? You're going to resurrect fucking Vince Lombardi's Packers to play in the fucking frozen tundras of hell." And then they said, "Well, we were thinking about that." They said one when they were like, "Instead of giving you a home game, we decided you were going to play this game in Canton, Ohio. We found a nice little intimate 4,000 arena. We think it's going to be fantastic for the game." So at that point, Pete Carroll's just like, "Oh, you guys are taking the piss. Like, don't ignore this. Like, this isn't real."
Yeah, I wish ours wasn't real.
He got a joke. My favorite one, though, full respect to the Chargers for doing an anime to release theirs, which was fucking brilliant. Like, it basically played like the intro to like a classic anime. So like the hi chi hi hoi tai si kind of music going over the top. But it had like all the different characters. So it starts off with like their coach Brandon Staley, and you just see 4th down come down, and he looks at it, looks back, and goes stuff like that, kind of mimicking that he always went for it on 4th down. And then they start going through the schedule, and like the first couple is like good teams, so it's sort of like, you know, different anime cartoons like Dragon Ball Z battles and stuff like that. Then it gets to week 3, the Jaguars, and it's just like a bar with like a secret camera recording this lady with like a Jaguar's face sitting at the bar, mimicking the lady that their coach Urban Meyer got caught groping on camera. Gets to week 5, which is the Browns, who've obviously signed
Well, I
Deshaun
think
Watson.
his hands were up here, right? If he was groping her, it was with his penis.
No, he was doing the old finger slide up the skirt.
Oh, Urban.
Charming guy. Week 5, it's the Browns, and the sign just comes up saying redacted on advice of our lawyers. So they just start shitting on teams. It gets to like week 7, and it's the Seahawks, and it's just them standing at the grave of like Seahawks being successful 2011 to 2019, and next to it is like running plays called on the goal line at Super Bowls, just like taking the piss out of the Seahawks. And this just continues, man. They shit on like 9 different teams that they're playing, on like deeply personal shit. It's very entertaining.
We've got 4 short weeks. We have way too many primetime games, which is great for the Eagles, but it's shit for me living here with the time difference.
Because you can't watch them.
Yeah, everyone's pretty hyped up on the Eagles though. So, Matt, my battery's gonna die on the phone, which I'm using to maintain this 2-way conversation.
We're gonna call it there, guys. We've had a great show. It's been fun,
Laurie.
guys.
Bye, Dave.
If you've enjoyed the news, watch the breakdown show that we did of the UFC. We are breaking these into different sections. Leave your thoughts on how the channel's going. Do you like it when we just did everything in one kind of big show, or do you like these different sections being broken up into?
I think that Loopy Godinez video has proved that I think you might have lost me, but I'm going to say it anyway.
That happened. So, Josh, we had 60 views, like loads of views on a video that we did. And the reason for it was, because I know that Josh can still hear me, I can't see him, that Josh just put the description as Loopy Godinez versus the person she was fighting. So everyone clicked on it thinking it was just the video of the actual fight happening rather than us discussing it. So however excited we were that we got 60 views on that, the reason was not what we thought. On that note, guys, we're going to call it a show. Thanks for watching. Peace out. And bye, Dave. Bye, Laura.
Bye, Laurie. Bye, Dave. And hello, all of the new people that think that this is the Champions League final.